Torah tells us, if a man or a woman will kill someone accidentally, inadvertently, the law is they should run to the city of refuge. Says the Torah in chapter 35, verse 25. V'yitzilui ha'eda esaretzeach. And the community shall save him. V'yitzilu ha'eda esaretzeach. Miyad goyel hadam, from the avenger of the blood, because the family member of this person that is deceased, that was murdered, has a right to go and kill the murderer, even though it was done by mistake, accidentally. And therefore, he shall run to the cities of refuge. And therefore they shall place him into the city of refuge. How long is this person who killed accidentally supposed to be in this city of refuge? Until the Kohen Gadol dies. If the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, will die a week later, he's out a week later. If the Kohen Gadol dies 40 years later, he's there for 40 years. And that is the halacha of the Torah. But if this murderer who killed by mistake accidentally will run out of the city of refuge for some reason, even for a bar mitzvah or a bris, says the Torah, and now the avenger of the blood will find him, he has a right to kill him. This is what the Torah says. How many cities of refuge should you make? We're already established, you should make 6 cities of refuge. 3 of them, Transjordan, on the other side of the Jordan, where Bnei Gad and Ruvain and the half of the tribe of Manasseh lived, and the other 3 in the land of Israel, proper. Says Rashi, and to understand this on 5 levels, Pshat Remez Drusoid, what is the reason that you have to wait until the death of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest? What's the connection between the two? Gives Rashi 2 reasons. Number 1 is, Shehu ba lahashroi shchina b'Yisrael. The reason why the murderer stays in the cities of refuge until the death of the high priest is because the high priest, his job is to bring the Shekhinah, is to bring the divine presence to the Jewish people. Number 1. Number 2, ulaharich yemeim, and to increase the life span of the Jewish people. That is the function of the Kohen Gadol. But this murderer, Bal Salik, es Shekhinah Yisrael, comes to remove the divine presence from the Jewish people. When you murder another person, this removes God's presence from the world. And furthermore, he is shortening the life of humankind. And therefore, it is unfit that this person should be in the presence of the high priest. So we remove him from the presence of the high priest and we put him to the city of refuge. Another pshat, another interpretation says Rashi, says Rashi, another interesting, fascinating pshat. And that is that the high priest should have prayed that such a terrible tragedy should not befall the Jewish people in his lifetime. In other words, not only does the Kohen have to pray for security and peace from the enemies of the Jewish people, but he must pray that even amongst the Jewish people, God forbid, there should be no murder, even accidentally. And because he wasn't praying hard enough, therefore now the murderer stays in the city of refuge until the death of the high priest. This is the pshat. This is the simple interpretation of the pasuk. What is the remez? What is the hint? We explained a moment ago that there were 3 cities of refuge. However, the Torah tells us in the book of Deuteronomy that when Mashiach will come, as the Rambam tells us, God will command us to add 3 more cities of refuge. So therefore, the city of refuge is also a hint for the coming of Mashiach. We hope and pray that Mashiach will come so we can have 3 more cities of refuge. comes the question to mind, why do we need cities of refuge when Mashiach comes? If Mashiach comes, there won't be any death in the world. There won't be any war in the world. There won't be any envy or hate. No one is going to want to kill one the other. Why then do we need cities of refuge? And there's a fascinating answer from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Rebbe says like this. He explains that during the period from Yemois HaMashiach, in other words, after Mashiach comes, before the second period, which is going to be the resurrection of the dead, during that time, even though the world will be in a state of peace and harmony and tranquility, is going to be like paradise. The Jewish people are going to be like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Now, even though the Garden of Eden is a beautiful place, it's a garden, and you have all these trees, and there is bliss and pleasure, etc., etc. However, there is the ability and the possibility of performing a sin. Evil is still prowling in the Garden of Eden. And that's why we know Adam and Eve sinned with the forbidden fruit. So therefore, during this short period after the coming of Mashiach, until the resurrection of the dead, when evil will be removed from the face of the earth, there will still be the opportunity for a person to sin. And that is why we need the cities of refuge. Why? Because the Gemara says, in the Tractate of Makis, that Torah is like a city of refuge. When a person studies Torah, they have the ability to know right from wrong. When you study Torah, it gives you the strength, the inner strength and courage to be able to do what is correct and to deny and banish evil from your life. So Torah is like the cities of refuge. Up until the coming of Mashiach, we have 6 cities of refuge. 6 represent the 6 books of the Mishnah, which is the foundation of the entire Talmud and the oral law. However, after the coming of Mashiach, there'll be a new revelation of Torah, a deeper revelation of Torah. The secrets of Torah will become revealed, which is primarily found in the teachings of Chabad, and therefore Chachma Bina Das, and therefore when Mashiach comes, there will be the introduction of 3 more cities of refuge, alluding to these secrets of the Torah that will be revealed to the entire world. So this is the remez, this is the hint, when we talk about the cities of refuge, to think about when Mashiach will come, how the entire world will be transformed through the study of Torah. Then we have Drush. We know that the portion of Matos Massei is always read throughout the 3 weeks. The 3 weeks when we have national mourning over the destructions of the first and second Holy Temple, starting from the 17th of Tammuz, when the walls of Jerusalem were breached, up until the 9th of Av, when the first and second Holy Temples were destroyed. And therefore it's customary throughout these weeks to study the laws of Beis HaBechira, the Rambam's laws of building of the temple. And the reason is because when Mashiach will come, these 3 weeks will be transformed to the greatest days of joy. The greatest holidays will be these 3 weeks. So already now we participate and we learn the building of the Holy Temple. And God says, when you learn the laws of the Holy Temple, I will consider this as if you are involved right now building the Holy Temple. So this ushers in the building of the Holy Temple. There's a law in the 5th chapter of the laws of Hilchos Beis HaBechira, of the building of the temple. The Rambam says over there that there was a chamber. And that chamber was called the Lishkas Ha'etz, the chamber of wood. It was also known as the chamber of the Parhedrin. What was this chamber? This was the chamber that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, who we spoke about a moment ago, would go into that chamber for 7 days prior to Yom Kippur. He had to separate from his wife and from his family, and he would now prepare spiritually and emotionally for the service of Yom Kippur, of the holiest day of the year, where he would enter into the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, because he was there one with God. And if the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, had even one sin, he would die either standing in the Holy of Holies or throughout that year. So the Kohen Gadol goes into a room known as the Lishkas Ha'etz, the room of wood, but it's also called the Pardes. Comes the question to mind, why do we have these two names? Why was it called the chamber of wood? And why was it called Pardes? This is hinted already in the words of Rashi, but Rabbi Yitzchak, the famous Goyin and Kabbalist, the father of the Rebbe, explains it in greater length, that eitz, wood, is associated with life. We know this when we raise the Torah in the shul, we say, Eitz Chaim Hi. This is the tree of life to those who hold on to it. In other words, tree of life, Torah represents life, and a tree represents life. But more essentially, there's a verse in the book of Isaiah which says, just like the tree are the days of my nation Israel. In other words, just like a tree lives a long time, so too Israel will live forever and ever. In other words, trees represent eternal life and long life. So on one hand, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, who his job is to bless the Jewish people with long life, he goes now into this room called the Lishkas Ha'etz, the room of the wood. But it's also called the room of Pardes. Pardes means royal appointees, because the king each year would now change the appointees and make new appointees. As the Gemara says in Yuma, Machlifin Oisa Kol Shnei Asar Chodesh. These appointees were changed every 12 months. Why are we calling this now also the room of the Pardes? Because during the Second Holy Temple, many of the high priests paid money to become a high priest. So it was like Pardes. So it seems that the Pardes is a derogatory statement. It was a room of Pardes. They were the appointees of the king. They paid money to get in. But we know that everything in Torah is holy and everything in Torah is uplifting. And the Torah is concerned not even to embarrass a non-kosher animal. So how much more so a kohen? So why do we call it Pardes? And here we find that the Rebbe gives a very innovative answer and a revolutionary insight to why it's called Pardes. We spoke about this a while ago, that the Kohanim, during the Second Holy Temple, that paid to go in, most of them did not last more than a year. And the question comes to mind, why were they paid to go in and become a high priest, and even though they knew they would die within the year? And the answer is, they wanted to go into the Holy of Holies and have that experience, to be able to be close to God. For that is the holiest place on earth, and God is there on Yom Kippur in a revealed manner, and therefore, because they had a love for God and a love for Torah, even though they were undeserving, still in all, they paid money to be able to have that ability and that experience because of their yearning and pining to connect with God. So, on one hand, the unworthy. On the other hand, they have a tremendous desire to connect with Almighty God. And therefore, it's called Pardes. In other words, to apply this to us and to apply this to the concept of Yom Kippur, what is the concept of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur going to the Holy of Holies? When the Kohen Gadol went into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, in essence, every single one of us entered into the Holy of Holies together with him. He was the Shliach Tzibur. He was the emissary on behalf of all the Jewish people. And because he went into the Holy of Holies, he was now elevated to a new level of purity. He was elevated to a new level of righteousness and holiness. And together, all the Jewish people were now elevated to a new reality, a new level of holiness, a new level of purity, and a new level of godliness. But Machlif and Oisa, he was changed every year. Why? What does this mean? It means every year there was a new Kohen Gadol. Every year we became new people. In other words, a person who does teshuva is a reborn individual, a brand new person. You're not the same person who was last year, because now I did teshuva. I'm totally reborn. In other words, the idea of Lishkas Eitz, the idea of the chamber of wood, represents Arichas Yamim, represents long life. But Lishkas HaParhedrin represents rebirth, which is the concept of true teshuva. And that is why we find that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, on Yom Kippur, wore white garments. Even though throughout the normal year he wore what you call the 8 begodim, the 8 garments, on Yom Kippur, throughout the day he changed back and forth, and he wore special white garments when he went into the Holy of Holiest, which of course is the reason why we today, on Yom Kippur, wear white, based on this concept that we today, each one of us, is a high priest. But yet there's an interesting halacha, and that is each year after Yom Kippur, the high priest would bury his white garments. And each year he would get a new white garment. He could not wear the white garment from last year. And the question is, why not? He wore it one day. He didn't even eat on that day. Why can't he wear the same garment every year? Just like the 8 garments he wore every single day, the same 8 garments, unless it was worn out. But as long as it was in good condition, he wore it. Why must he change the white garments each year? And the answer is because each year he's a brand new person. You can't wear the same clothing as last year because I'm a different person this year. And therefore, each year, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, was required to wear new garments. And this is a lesson for all of us, that on Yom Kippur we become brand new people. All of us go into the Lishkas Parhedrin. We go into this room for 7 days before to prepare and to refine ourselves. So when it comes to Yom Kippur, we are truly brand new people. This is the drush. What is the soid? What is the esoteric? Why is it that the Kohen Gadol represents long life? Because the Kohen Gadol by nature is a person of kindness. And kindness is associated with a long life. And we see this in Ethics of Our Fathers. Hillel tells us, you shall be of the students of Aaron, oiv shalom v'roidev shalom, to love peace and pursue peace. By loving peace and pursuing peace, we are blessed with long life. And therefore, throughout the 3 weeks, is a time we are supposed to increase in Avas Yisrael, to increase in brotherly love, and this brings us long life and brings long life to our brothers and sisters. So the Kohen represents kindness. And kindness is on the right side. We know that in Kabbalah there are 3 different pillars, the right, the left, and the center. So the right column represents kindness. And being that the Kohen is the concept of chesed, kindness, which is from the right side represents this concept of eternal life, of long life. Finally, we have the third concept, which is Chassidus. And the concept of Chassidus is as follows. To understand the original Rashi that we started with, we began to explain earlier that Rashi gives 2 reasons for why the Reitzeach, the murderer, goes into the cities of refuge. Number 1 is the Kohen brings long life and it brings the Shekhinah into the world. And the Reitzeach, the murderer, is the opposite. He removes God's presence from the world. And number 2 is he brings death into the world. Secondly is the Kohen Gadol should have prayed on behalf of the congregation, on behalf of the people, that they should not, God forbid, murder one the other, even accidentally. And because he didn't do this, therefore, says Rashi, that he loses the status. And the Kohen Gadol now is responsible, so to speak, for this person. And the Reitzeach, the murderer, stays in the city of refuge until the death of the Kohen Gadol. Comes the question to mind, why does Rashi need 2 interpretations? And how do we apply this to our daily life? The question that Rashi has over here is, Seemingly, the Torah tells us that he goes into the city of refuge so that the Goyal Hadam, which is the avenger of the blood, should not be able to come and kill him. If so, why do we now connect it and associate this with the lifespan of the high priest? He never met the high priest. He doesn't know the high priest. Why do we connect the two? Therefore comes along Rashi and says like this. He's not really going into the city of refuge simply because he is running away from the avenger of the blood. That's not the real reason he's going to the city of refuge. What is the real reason why the murderer goes into the city of refuge? He goes into the city of refuge because that is his kapara. That is his atonement. That is his tikkun. That is his fixing. So to have his tikkun, to have his fixing, and to have his atonement, he needs to go into golus. He has to go into exile because exile atones. Comes along Rashi and says, if that is the case, why do we connect it with the high priest? So comes along Rashi and says, number one, the reason is because the high priest brings long life and he shortens the life. And number two is you should know that the high priest should have prayed on his behalf. What do we see from here? We see from here, again, the idea of Avas Yisrael, the idea of the importance of brotherly love throughout these 3 weeks. And that is, number one, brotherly love does not mean I love you and I respect you, only someone on my level, someone who's a part of my social status. Only that person do I love and respect. But someone who's not in my environment, not in my arena, that person I don't know, I don't care about, it's not my problem. So here, the Torah shows that there are two opposite people who theoretically are mutually exclusive. Polar opposites. The Kohen Gadol, the highest, most holiest Jew in the world at that time. And on the other hand, someone who's a murderer, which is considered to be the lowest person in society. The Torah connects these two and says that the Kohen Gadol's job is to bring long life to the world. And long life means not only for himself or his family or his friends, but his job and his ability is to bring long life to everybody. Number two is the Kohen Gadol has to pray. He prays not only for himself, but he prays for every single person, even for a murderer, even for a potential murderer. The Kohen Gadol has to pray. So this is the message of the Parsha. This is the message of this week's Torah Parsha. In the 3 weeks, a time when the temple was destroyed, as the Gemara says, that the second holy temple was destroyed because of sinas chinam, unwarranted hatred. This is a time we have to increase in unconditional love. And I want to end with one final story. There's a personal story that happened to me, and it's a bit of an embarrassing story, but I'm sure you'll appreciate it. It was 1989, and I began working here in Brooklyn Heights, starting a minyan. We were doing shiurim classes, and we had a judges class every week with the judges. And this class was done together with me and my uncle, Rabbi Shimon Hecht. And 1 week he would give the class, 1 week I would give the class, and we would sit together and help each other and support each other. And this went on for a while, until we decided to bring the judges to the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Sunday morning for dollars, to get a bracha and a dollar from the Rebbe. So, being that I was the younger one, and I was not yet married, I was given the task to organize the entire mission. And I went to Benzi's Fish, I ordered a good fish platter, and I ordered delicious bagels, got hot coffee, and I prepared an entire breakfast in the National Committee for the Furtherance of Jewish Education in my grandfather, Rabbi Jacob J, Hecht, the Blessed Memory's office. And the judges came Sunday morning, we ate, we had breakfast, my grandfather, Rabbi Hecht, spoke to them, inspired them, and then from there we walked to 770 Eastern Parkway, the headquarters of Lubavitch, and there the Rebbe was giving out dollars, and we had a special pass not to have to wait on the 2-3 hour line, and we went behind the back door, and we came and appeared right in front of the Rebbe. And the Rebbe gave each judge a different dollar, and I gave him a bracha, and spoke to them, etc., etc. At that time, we took a picture with all the judges outside of 770. My grandfather, of blessed memory, my uncle, Rabbi Hecht, myself, and all the judges. A few weeks later, this picture was published in the Panorama, which was the official newsletter of the NCFJE, the National Committee for the Furtherance of Jewish Education, my grandfather's newsletter. And there he said the story that the judges from Brooklyn Heights came down to the Rebbe, and it was a beautiful event, and Rabbi Shimon Hecht organized the whole thing, and Rabbi Hecht spoke to them, because Rabbi Hecht is the head of the entire National Committee for the Furtherance of Jewish Education. And then there was a picture from left to right, and it happened to say my name over there in the picture. I was young, naive, gullible, narcissistic, and I was a bit upset, I did all the work, and here, I don't get any credit. Okay, but I'm quiet, I'm humble, I keep my mouth shut. The next Shabbos, I'm in 770, a few thousand people there at Shabbos. I'm walking like this, hi, I was in the picture of the Panorama, I made it. And somebody walks over to me and says, oh, I saw your picture in the Panorama. Oh, Baruch Hashem, somebody saw it. I was hoping somebody would see it. He says, tell me something. Why are you there? What was the reason you were there? You're looking for a shidduch? You're looking to get married, so you want to put your face out there? Oh, I was insulted. I was mad. I was angry. Like, oh, now I got to go back to my grandfather. So I ran to the National Committee Monday morning, and my grandfather's sitting at his long table, conference table. He's talking to the governors and the senators and everybody, from the biggest people to the smallest people, from the murderers to the Kohen Gadol. My grandfather spoke to everybody, helped everybody. He said, Zaidi, you have a big problem. Hold on, Governor. My grandson is here. He has a real problem. Hold on. Yes, Ari, what's the problem? Zaidi, you know the panorama you printed? Yeah. And you know my pictures there? Yeah. So what happened? But you said nothing about me. I did all the work, and someone said to me, oh, you're doing it for a shidduch? I was all embarrassed. Oh, that's a good question. All right, go to the end of the table over there. Sit down. When I finish my phone call, you'll come back. So I sit there. And, I said to myself, at the beginning, I was like a little embarrassed to even bring up such a narcissistic question, But now my grandfather seems to validate it, so it was good that I brought it up. Okay, my grandfather finishes the important conversation, saving the world, and then he calls me up, come, sit down right over here. I sit down. He said, tell me again what happened. And I go through the whole story, and I'm like, all excited, I'm really right. And I'm gloating, I did all this work, and I brought all these people, and I prepared the whole breakfast, and I even got to make sure there was a picture taken, and there's no reference whatsoever what I did and what I was involved. And not only that, I was agreeing to keep my mouth shut. But then someone really embarrassed me and said, oh, you did it for a shidduch? My grandfather thinks for a moment. He says, tell me one thing. The guy who asked you that question, did he do it out of Ahavas Yisrael? Did he do it out of brotherly love? Or did he do it from the opposite of Ahavas Yisrael? Hepech Ahavas Yisrael. And I think for a moment and I say, Zaidi, it definitely was not coming from Ahavas Yisrael. No. I know that guy. He couldn't care about me 2 nickels. And there's no way he did it because he was concerned about me. He said, if that is the case, it's a lesson for life. When someone says something to you or complains to you, always ask yourself, where is the question coming from? Is it coming from a good place? Respond. It's coming from a bad place? Forget about it. It shouldn't bother you. That's the first lesson. And the second lesson you should know, my grandfather had a hall of fame on his wall. Pictures with presidents, senators, governors, mayors, important rabbis and people, and news clippings from all over different newspapers and magazines. Very impressive wall of fame. And he says to me, you see all these pictures? I say, yeah. You see all these newspaper clippings? I say, yeah, very impressive. He says, listen to me. I never did anything to get my name in the paper. I did it because it was the right thing. I did it to bring the Lubavitcher Rebbe Nachas Ruach. Don't ever do it to get your name in the paper. So those were the two important lessons he taught me. When I began my career, I began my journey to be a public figure and a rabbi and a teacher. Number one is Avas Yisrael, to love every person unconditionally. And number two, do the right thing for the right reasons. So we hope and pray in the schus of Avas Yisrael, in the schus of loving our fellow and going beyond our comfort zone. We hope and pray to see already the promise of the prophets and the halacha of the Rambam that these 3 weeks will be transformed to the greatest days of joy with the coming of Mashiach from Hecht. Amen.